704 coming in. We're coming in hot with a hot pursuit. It's Chip.
Remember those Sunday nights back in the late 70s and early 80s? Your whole family gathered around the TV, watching Ponch and John chase down bad guys on those sleek Kawasaki motorcycles. Chips wasn't just a show about two highway patrolmen. It was about those incredible machines they rode. Now, most people remember the chrome, the sirens, and those iconic white fairings. But what you probably don't know is that these motorcycles had some of the most unusual features ever put on a police bike. We're talking about speedometers that trapped evidence, mystery switches that didn't do anything, and design quirks that would make modern engineers scratch their heads. Today we're pulling back the curtain on the Kawasaki KZ1000P, the bike that became the face of American law enforcement for nearly a quarter century. Some of these facts are going to surprise you. Others might even blow your mind. So let's fire up these engines and get rolling. Number 15, the speedometer that trapped speeders. Here's something that sounds like science fiction, but was absolutely real. Back in 1978, when the first C-Series Kawasaki police bikes rolled out, they had this ingenious little device built right into the speedometer. When an officer flipped on those pursuit lights to chase down a speeder, a solenoid would activate and literally trap the speedometer needle against the glass. Think about that for a second. The needle would lock in place, marking exactly how fast the violator was going. This was before radar guns became standard equipment on police vehicles. Officers couldn't just point a laser and get a digital readout. They needed physical proof of speed, and Kawasaki engineers came up with this mechanical solution that was pure genius. The beauty of this system was its simplicity. No batteries to die, no calibration needed every other week. Just a simple electromagnetic lock that gave officers solid evidence for traffic citations. It was like having a built-in witness that never forgot what it saw. Number 14, the bike with two speedometers. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Those early 1978 C1 models didn't just have one speedometer. They had two, both mounted right there on the instrument panel. Here's how it worked. The officer would be cruising along, keeping an eye on traffic. When somebody blew past doing 20 over the limit, the officer would hit the pursuit light switch. At that exact moment, the left speedometer would lock at whatever speed the motorcycle was traveling. The right speedometer kept working normally, letting the officer know how fast they were going during the chase. It was brilliant, really. One gauge to catch the bad guy, one gauge to keep the good guy safe. The problem was, it made the dashboard look like the cockpit of a small airplane. Plus, all that extra hardware added weight and complexity. But for a few years there, if you saw a CHP bike with dual speedometers, you knew you were looking at something special. Number 13, the mystery switch that did absolutely nothing. Okay, this one's gonna make you laugh. You know how sometimes manufacturers keep building things the old way even after they've changed the design? That's exactly what happened with the throttle assembly on these Kawasaki's. The throttle had 3 positions, including one marked with an M for match speed. This made perfect sense back when the bikes had 2 speedometers. You'd flip to M position to match the speed of the vehicle you were pacing. But here's the kicker. After Kawasaki replaced that second speedometer with a tachometer, they kept making the 3-position switch anyway. So for years, literally years, police officers had this M position on their throttles that did absolutely nothing. It was vestigial, like your appendix or the buttons on a suit jacket sleeve. But Kawasaki just kept installing those switches because, well, that's how they'd always done it. I bet there were rookies who spent their first week on the job trying to figure out what that M position was for, only to have the veterans tell them it was just for show. That's the kind of quirk you just don't see on modern equipment. Number 12, 25 years of the same bike. In today's world, car companies redesign their vehicles every 3 to 5 years. Smartphones become obsolete in 12 months. But the Kawasaki KZ1000P, it stayed in production from 1981 all the way to 2005. That's nearly a quarter of a century of the same basic design. The last one rolled off the assembly line at Kawasaki's Lincoln, Nebraska plant in September 2005. By that point, the bike had become a legend. Police departments across the country knew exactly what they were getting. A proven workhorse that wouldn't let them down. Think about everything that changed between 1981 and 2005. We went from cassette tapes to MP3s, from rotary phones to smartphones, from paper maps to GPS. But those Kawasaki police bikes, they just kept on doing their job year after year, barely changing at all. That kind of longevity doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you built something right the first time. Number 11. Eric Estrada had never touched a motorcycle. This one's gonna shock you. Eric Estrada, Ponch himself, the guy who became the face of motorcycle cops everywhere, had never even sat on a motorcycle before he got the role on CHiPs. Not once. Never twisted a throttle. Never felt the wind in his face. Never experienced that feeling of leaning into a turn. The producers handed him the part, and then somebody asked the obvious question, "Hey, can you ride a motorcycle?" The answer was no. So they put him through an intensive 8-week crash course. And I mean that literally, because he did crash a few times while learning. But here's the really wild part. Estrada didn't actually get his full motorcycle license until well after the show ended, and when he finally went to take the test, he failed twice before passing on his third attempt. Can you imagine? Millions of people watched him ride those Kawasaki's like a pro for 6 seasons, and the whole time he was basically learning on the job. That's dedication to the craft, or maybe just really good stunt doubles and camera angles. Number 10, 600 to 900 pounds of motorcycle. These weren't lightweight sport bikes, folks. We're talking about serious machinery here. The base Kawasaki weighed in at around 600 pounds without any police equipment. But once you bolted on the fairings, saddle boxes, pursuit lights, radios, and all the other gear that officers needed, you were looking at something closer to 900 pounds. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than most modern Harley Davidsons. When Eric Estrada had his serious accident in 1979, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, he got thrown from a 600-pound motorcycle. That's like getting into a disagreement with a small horse and losing. Managing that kind of weight required real skill, especially at low speeds. You couldn't just muscle these bikes around like you could a modern sport bike. Officers had to learn proper technique, how to use the bike's weight and momentum instead of fighting against it. Drop one of these at a stoplight, and you weren't picking it back up by yourself. But that weight also meant stability. At highway speeds, these Kawasaki's were rock solid. They didn't get pushed around by wind or buffeted by passing trucks. When you needed to chase somebody down at 100 miles an hour, you wanted that mass underneath you. Number 9, run flat tires that work too well. Here's a case of good intentions leading to unexpected problems. Kawasaki equipped these police bikes with run flat tires, the kind with super thick sidewalls that could keep going even after getting punctured. Sounds perfect for police work, right? Wrong. Those thick sidewalls that made the tires bulletproof also made them transmit every single bump and crack in the road straight up through the handlebars. After a full 8-hour shift, officers would climb off these bikes with their hands vibrating and their arms feeling like they'd been jackhammering concrete. But wait, it gets worse. All that extra sidewall thickness created more friction and heat. The tires wore out faster than regular high-performance tires. So you had officers who were more fatigued and tires that needed replacing more often. Eventually, departments just said forget it and went back to standard tires. Dunlop even stopped making the run-flat versions because nobody wanted them anymore. Sometimes the old-fashioned way is the best way. A good quality regular tire, properly inflated and regularly inspected, turned out to be the better solution all along. Number 8, floorboards instead of foot pegs. Here's a detail that separated the police models from civilian bikes right away. Instead of the foot pegs you'd find on a regular Kawasaki, the KZ1000P came with folding floorboards. Now, this might not sound like a big deal, but trust me, it was. Foot pegs are great for aggressive riding, for shifting your weight around and really carving through corners. They give you a flat platform to rest your feet on. You can shift your position around, relieve pressure points, keep the blood flowing. On a long highway patrol shift, that comfort makes all the difference between showing up for work energized and hobbling around like you just ran a marathon. Plus, the floorboards folded up when you needed to lean the bike over. Best of both worlds. Comfort when you're cruising, clearance when you're chasing. It was one of those simple design choices that showed Kawasaki really understood what police work required. Number 7, the most recognizable police bike in the world. That fiberglass fairing with the front pursuit lights and windshield became the most identifiable police motorcycle design on the planet. And I'm not exaggerating. You could show a picture of that fairing to somebody in Tokyo, London, or Sao Paulo, and they'd probably recognize it from CHiPs. The fairing wasn't just about looks though. It had 2 covered pockets built right right in for storage. Officers could stash their citation books, pens, maybe a granola bar for those long shifts. The windshield protected them from wind blast at highway speeds, and those pursuit lights mounted right up front. They were positioned exactly where approaching drivers would see them in their mirrors. But it was the shape that made it iconic. That swooping aerodynamic design with the white paint scheme became synonymous with California Highway Patrol. Even today, when people think of a police motorcycle, that's the image that pops into their heads. Kawasaki basically created a design so perfect that it became the template everyone else copied. That's legacy. Number 6, 95% parts compatibility. Here's something that made fleet managers absolutely giddy with joy. From 1982 to 2005, that's 23 years, folks, the KZ1000P maintained over 95% parts compatibility across the entire production run. Do you understand how remarkable that is? Think about trying to find parts for a 1982 car today. You'd be searching junkyards and online forums, hoping somebody's got the exact right widget for your specific model year. But with these Kawasaki's, a part from a 1985 bike would fit on a 2003 model. For police departments managing fleets of these motorcycles, this was an absolute game changer. They could stock one set of spare parts and know those parts would work on any bike in their garage. A carburetor from 1990 worked just fine on a bike built in 2000. Same with brake components, electrical parts, suspension pieces, almost everything. This simplified maintenance, reduced costs, and meant bikes spent less time in the shop and more time on the road. It's the kind of standardization that modern manufacturers have mostly abandoned in favor of planned obsolescence. But back then, Kawasaki built these things to last, and to keep on lasting. Number 5, filming on brand new, unopened freeways. The producers of CHiPs had a problem. They needed to film high-speed motorcycle chases on Los Angeles freeways, but you can't exactly shut down a freeway in America's second largest city just to make a TV show. So they came up with a brilliant solution. They filmed on freeways that had just been completed but hadn't opened to the public yet. Interstate 210 and California State Route 2 in La Cañada Flintridge provided perfect locations for the first season. Fresh pavement, no traffic, and all the authentic freeway scenery you could want. Can you imagine how surreal that must have been? Riding a motorcycle at full speed on a brand new freeway with nobody else around. No cars, no trucks, no traffic at all. Just miles of empty concrete and freedom to film whatever they needed. It was a perfect example of timing and opportunity coming together. Those freeways were going to open eventually anyway, but for a brief window, they belonged exclusively to Ponch and John and the CHiPs production crew. That's how you get those gorgeous, wide-open chase scenes that became the show's signature. Number 4, the accident that became part of the show. August 6, 1979. Eric Estrada was filming a scene when things went horribly wrong. He got thrown from his Kawasaki and hit the pavement hard. Really hard. The result? Several fractured ribs and both wrists broken. This wasn't a minor tumble. This was a serious, career-threatening injury. Estrada ended up hospitalized, and suddenly the show was in crisis mode. Their star was laid up in a hospital bed, and they had episodes to film, but instead of trying to write around it or bring in a replacement, the producers did something smart. They wove the accident right into the storyline. The show acknowledged what happened, dealt with it head on, and kept going. That 600-pound motorcycle had done some real damage, but Estrada healed up, got back on the bike, and kept riding. You've got to respect that kind of toughness. A lot of people would have said, you know what, I think I'm done with motorcycles. But he came back and finished the series. Number 3, Ponch and John never drew their weapons. Here's something that set CHiPs apart from every other cop show on television, then or now. Throughout the entire 139 episode run of the series, the two main characters never drew their guns, not once. Think about that. 6 seasons of police work, countless chases, dangerous criminals, tense situations, and Ponch and John never unholstered their weapons. There was exactly one character who drew his gun during the entire series, and it happened only 3 times. Officer Barry Baricha. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate choice by the show's creators to keep things light, keep the violence minimal, and focus on the human side of police work work rather than the gunfights. In an era when cop shows were getting darker and grittier, ships went the opposite direction. And you know what? It worked. The show was a massive hit without ever firing a shot. It proved you could make compelling police drama without turning it into a war zone every week. That's something worth remembering. Number 02, beating Harley-Davidson at their own game. When Kawasaki introduced the KZ1000C police model in 1978, they weren't just entering the police motorcycle market, they were declaring war on Harley-Davidson, the longtime king of American police bikes. And here's the thing, they won. Harley-Davidson AMF was having some rough years in the late 1970s, quality control issues, reliability problems. The bikes just weren't what police departments needed. Meanwhile, the Kawasaki KZ1000 series was dependable, reliable, and performed like a dream. Departments across the country started switching over. The CHP adopted them. Other agencies followed suit. This was a huge deal. Harley-Davidson had owned this market for decades, but when push came to shove, when departments had to choose between brand loyalty and actual performance, they went with what worked. The Kawasaki simply did the job better. It took Harley years to recover from this and rebuild their police division, but by that time, Kawasaki had already established the KZ1000P as the gold standard for police motorcycles. Number 01, 130 miles per hour with all the gear. Here's the grand finale, the fact that probably impressed officers most when they first threw a leg over these bikes. Despite carrying all that police equipment, the fairings, the lights, the radio gear, the saddle boxes, everything, the KZ1000P could still hit 130 miles per hour. That's genuine high performance, folks. The 998cc inline-4 engine cranked out approximately 88 horsepower, and Kawasaki's advanced dual overhead cam design made sure all that power got to the rear wheel efficiently. In real-world police work, officers rarely push these bikes to their absolute limits, but knowing you had that performance in reserve, that changed everything. If somebody in a sports car thought they could outrun a cop on a motorcycle, they were in for a rude awakening, and it wasn't just straight-line speed. These bikes handled well, stopped confidently, and remained stable even at triple-digit velocities. The combination of power, handling, and reliability made them the perfect pursuit vehicle. That's why these Kawasaki's became legends. They looked good. They performed better, and they did it day after day, year after year, for nearly a quarter century. So there you have it, 15 facts about the Kawasaki KZ1000P that most people never knew. These weren't just props for a TV show. They were serious machines that served police departments across America for decades. From speedometers that trapped evidence, to mystery switches that did nothing. From Eric Estrada learning to ride on camera, to those brand new freeways that became the perfect filming location. Every one of these facts tells part of the bigger story. The story of a motorcycle that became an icon. The story of a partnership between Japanese engineering and American law enforcement that worked better than anyone expected. And the story of a TV show that made millions of us fall in love with the idea of riding the highways, keeping people safe, and looking good while doing it. Those Kawasaki KZ1000Ps are mostly retired now. You'll find them in museums, private collections, and the occasional police department that kept one around for special events. But their legacy lives on every time somebody fires up a police motorcycle and heads out on patrol. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the vehicles and machines that shape the culture. And if you've got your own CHiPs memories, or if you've ever ridden one of these Kawasaki's, drop a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.